Hello, welcome to PODnas. This is a sports show with a little Southern and Cajun flair. I'm Daniel Hawks. That's Jarrett Roser. Today is a great day to be a Tiger and an FSU fan, but we'll get to that in a second.
I don't have any of my FSU stuff around me, but I would have pulled that out too.
We are going to recap amazing week one of college football. It's back, baby. We're here. We're ready to roll. We're on all cylinders. I almost cursed start immediately. Stuff was happening this weekend, so let's get into it. First things first, go Tigers. They go into Timu Death Valley and they pull off a great win. I was so impressed by the defense in this game. From the last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years since the national championship game, of just like not even being able to stop at a stop sign kind of defense. The way that they played was excellent. It was great. There's so many things to take away from this game.
Let's start with just the defense before we give each its due. I don't know how many times, as we talked about leading up to this season and question marks, and I told a lot of people out in nature, in the world around us, running into people and people saying, man, hopefully the defense is better, whatever. I was so confident in the ability that this defense was going to take another notable step forward in a second year under Blake Baker and all the guys that came in and plugged into key roles, and just the what I was hearing coming out of camp leading up to this season. And man, did they look really I'm not going to say they were, the LSU defense of like peak LSU defenses, but they looked far more that part, particularly for a season opening game on the road, a top 5 opponent and all of those things. They got pressure. They kept Klubnik and Clemson as a whole off balance. Cade Klubnik only completed 50% of his passes for the game, and he guys
looked flustered. I mean, both quarterbacks kind of had their moments of looking flustered because both defenses are super legit. But Klubnik looked flustered a lot of that game.
He had guys in his face pretty much start to finish, all the way to kind of the exclamation point of Perk getting that fourth down pressure and creating a bad throw.
Can we just say, and I'm going to stand on business on this, I think we have I don't do anything. I think LSU has the best linebacking core in the country.
Oh, yeah. It's a good group. And you look at Weeks. I mean, you look at Perk, obviously, with his more star role, and then the Weeks brothers, but there's good depth there that we'll see more and more of over the course of the season. But it is a great group. I mean, starting at top, I think people forgot the type of playmaker Perk can be when he's given the opportunity to be that guy. And we talked about it, I think, on our season preview dynamic. As much as it sucked to not have him last year, I think you saw Whit Weeks really come into his own over the course of the season. And so now you get Whit kind of peaking and becoming a better player than he was before West and Perk were hurt, and now all these guys coming back together and being key pieces of this thing. All of the depth that they brought in on the defensive front, all of the veteran pieces they brought into that secondary, Mansour Delane with his interception and a couple of big breakups. AJ Halsey, I thought, after having to sit out the first half of that game because of the suspension dating back to his Houston finale last season, he was a big impact guy and came in and had a breakup in the second half. And you have a team that shut out Clemson in the second half, a team that held Clemson to 31 rushing yards, 261 total yards, and 10 points, all of which were lows since at least last season opener, and some of the fewest they've had since the pandemic. It was it was a dominant performance by the LSU defense.
And at one point in the first quarter, it was like LSU had 60 some rushing yards, Clemson had -10. The defense was on it. It was so good to see. I forgot how much I missed LSU's defense being absolutely legit. And it looks like they are off of one game.
Yeah. You mentioned the negatives, negative yardage for Clemson. Clemson, when you count the kneel down before the end of the second quarter, Clemson had more technically negative yardage drives than they did drives of more than 45 yards. They had one long touchdown drive in the second quarter, and they had 2 drives where they went slightly backwards, and that says quite a bit. And you made a great point there too. It's game 1. All these games that we're about to talk about, the reflex is to get overly optimistic or overly pessimistic. The key thing here for any teams that start well is it's still college football and you still have to do it every single Saturday. And so LSU has to keep looking like they looked on Saturday for a lot of Saturdays in the weeks to come. But in terms of a starting point, absolutely phenomenal job by the defense, no doubt. And we've only talked about the defense so far. But that's kind of why I wanted to focus it, and make sure we're taking one at a time, because we could go off the rails and just be talking about this game alone for half an hour.
I was about to say, how much do we want to get into this? Because I can talk about it like I have been. I went up to my entire staff at the bar that I work at here in Chicago, Illinois. And literally yesterday, I was just like, hey, do you guys know that the LSU Tigers won yesterday? It was a big game. It was pretty great. Let's talk about some of this offense, though. One, Garrett Nussmeier is now the leader in the Heisman voting. It was like plus 700 last time I looked at it on DraftKings. Really, that touchdown that wasn't a touchdown was such a beautiful ball. Beautiful. He dropped that thing in there. It was just amazing. Maybe he had one more inch and he could have held on to that, but whatever. I digress. Also, the trick play with Xavier Thomas was it was just great. One thing I would have loved to see Chris Hilton be a little bit more involved, but I honestly think that the Clemson defense was a little bit keying in on him and not letting him get involved. But we turn up to Aaron Anderson almost getting over 100 yards, averaging 16.5 yards a catch. He was just when they needed him, he was the guy, along with Nuss, obviously. But one thing that really stood out to me, and I was watching the whole night, was this is not new. This was a take on every single show that I've listened to, that I've aggregated in my stupid little mind. How was the LSU offensive line with all these newcomers going to hold up? And I thought they did really well from that. And the running backs just took care of business. I don't really remember. It was sometime middle of last year that LSU had a game where the running game was keeping them on track. Like all of last year, for better or worse, it was you had to pass it because you didn't know what you were going to get from the running game. But the running game controlled the tempo, everything that LSU wanted to do, and able them to give that defense a little bit of rest. It was a really great performance by, like we said, all of the question marks for this game just feel like they were answered. Like we said, for 1 week, but it feels like they were answered very loudly in this week 1 game.
Yeah, the offensive line was certainly my biggest question mark going in, and it was an area that I felt like there was a lot of talent, but we wanted to see how it came together, and particularly with a first test like this Clemson defensive front. And they had a great first showing, that LSU offensive line, even in spots where they had to just sub some guys in, sub some guys out. Tyree Adams was injured at one point, and DJ Chester, who had lost a battle inside as a center or guard, he had to step up and play a few plays there at left tackle, which was not ideal. But with whatever adversity faced them in terms of competition or some of those moments along the way, they stepped up and they set the table for a lot of really positive things for LSU. A big focal point for this offense coming into this season was some of what you talked about there, to have a better running game, to stay on schedule, to give Garrett enough balance and help that he didn't feel like he had to do everything all the time. And then for Garrett, don't feel that level of pressure. Just do what you need to do and run this offense and don't turn the ball over. He had no interceptions against that defense. They got it wasn't a huge running performance, but it was a really solid one against a good defense, and it positioned them well. Caden Durham with his 74 yards and a touchdown, and I felt like
also three catches for 22. Like having that ability for Garrett to be able to check down when he needs to, and Garrett also realizing, hey, the play's broken. Maybe I just get it to one of my playmakers in a little bit of space right outside the line and let them do what they do. And he was able to do that. It was really, really good to see.
And Joe Sloan and company just mixing up some of the ways that they were doing that, the ways that they were getting Caden the ball. You mentioned some of the little quick throws. The first drive, the first few plays until it kind of stalled there, I really loved just the different looks that they were giving.
Yeah.
It obviously worked out.
That shotgun package with the four wide receivers wide, I've run in NCAA a lot. And I was like, hey, I felt like Leo. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. And you saw early on, they got both tight ends involved. We're looking to Bauer Sharp. We're looking to trade as Green. And I was really worried when we saw those two first half fumbles. And you mentioned the kind of tough game for Chris Hilton. He'll bounce back. He'll have a big game here sooner than later. But they made sure to weather some of those storms, and some of those things are also going to happen in a season opener at times where you're going to have some miscues. The first half was not always clean, but they really improved it in the second half. No turnovers in the second half, went from 1 for 5 on third down in the first half to 3 for 6 in the second half. They got that one particularly explosive play for, I think it was 39 yards to Aaron Anderson, where he just kind of hit that next gear and provided them a spark when they needed it. And so you end up with the 2 second half touchdowns, the win. You mentioned as well the Baron Brown touchdown that felt like it should have been a third touchdown. And so an awful lot of positives to take away from this game. And it could have been even that much more positive, I guess, if they hadn't been jobbed at some points by the refs.
I am usually fairly I'm not, but I'm usually fairly chill when I'm working. I have a big personality, but usually I check it in at work. I'm there to do a job. I was not chill at work. Several people were like, I've never seen you like this. I was like, yeah, man, it's LSU football. It's different. You don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, super impressive. Obviously you end that skid of 5 straight season openers lost. The last time they had won a season opener was in that 2019 national title run season. And so we had talked in some of our previews for this season as well, just the opportunity to, from a vibes check standpoint, to start on a positive note and not have to answer the same dang questions again. It is great for them to just, okay, now it's on to La Tech and it's on to Florida, and just keep chugging along instead of having to have the state of the program questions that Brian Kelly has had to answer on Labor Day week each of the past couple of years. I think is huge now, and they get to clean up some of the miscues and get better with a 1-0 record instead of having to deal with all of the other, circus of questions and criticisms around them. And at the same time, as much as we look at, man, they need to stop scheduling some of these huge games to start the season, like ease into this thing a little bit. The benefit now that you got a win is you started this season as the 9th ranked team. You just beat a top 5 opponent in their place, and 4 of the teams above you this weekend lost. And so you're positioning yourself immediately as a top 5 type team. We won't see until tomorrow, the new AP polls, but everything is in front of you now, and you already have a signature win in your belt, and it's, it wasn't even September yet.
Yeah. All in all, great weekend. We could talk about LSU all day. So I think we can put a cap in it. La Tech next week. Let's keep it rolling, boys. That's all I got to say. I want to talk about this Tulane Northwestern game though. Because Northwestern,
as you should,
came with some disrespect, and John Summerall.
And you don't disrespect New Orleans ever. So if you don't know what happened, Tulane beat the brakes off Northwestern. 4 interceptions from Northwestern's quarterback. Defense looked stout.
But prior to the game, it's the 20-year anniversary of Katrina this past weekend. Tulane wanted to wear the same jersey, same helmet, same jersey that they wore when first coming back from Katrina. And Northwestern, I don't know what happened. They denied the request. So Tulane wasn't able to wear white at home like they wanted to. And Tulane head coach had some things to say. When you show disrespect to the city of New Orleans, that's what's going to happen to you. You're going to run into a team like this. They had a chip on their shoulder because I wanted to wear the exact same uniform that team wore 20 years ago. Request got denied. We might have used it for a little bit of motivation to represent the city. So don't disrespect New Orleans ever. Period. Stop.
And for folks in Louisiana, I think mostly have seen this by now. But if you haven't seen the video yet, let's just say John Summerall delivers it with a certain level of intensity that, supersedes what Hawks was able to bring there as we enjoy it quite a bit. But I mean, Summerall is
that was like trying to tell a joke, another comedian's joke.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized halfway through, I was like, I'm not doing this any justice at all. Just go watch the video.
Coach Summerall has gotten his share of love on episodes of this show last season and his first season back in New Orleans with the Wave, but it just every time out, I mean, consummate dude. I was ready to run through one of my condo walls watching that post game. As I told folks in our episode going into the weekend, I made a home Saturday of it so I could watch Tulane. I could watch that Texas and Ohio State game that we're about to talk about. I could watch LSU later that night and take care of a lot of other stuff. And so I was kind of bouncing off the walls a little bit before we even got to the LSU point of the day. And the Summerall quote was certainly part of that. And we kept talking about one hell of a performance by LSU, one hell of a performance by Tulane to rise to that occasion. The 23-3 score was the same score that the Saints beat the Falcons in the Dome coming game after Katrina as well. So there were a lot of connections there, just tying it back historically. Javion White, the Franklin Parish star, former bootlegger standout. Shout out to the 7-on-7 squad. He had 2 interceptions, was the first time Tulane had 4 interceptions in a game since 2023. The first time they had a player with multiple interceptions in a game since I think it was 2021 that Macon Clark from Destrehan had done so against Houston. So super opportunistic performance by that secondary for the Green Wave. A really nice debut by Jake Retzlaff, who I should have written down his stats in front of me, but he was, for a guy that had only been on campus for 38 days, he was efficient, and he popped off a long touchdown run before the half that showed some wheels that I don't know that everyone necessarily knew he had. And so similarly to what we were talking about without
he was the leading rusher. He had 113 yards on the ground.
He popped off like a 60-yard touchdown run before half where he just pulled away from everybody. I thought it was 69. I couldn't remember 100%, so I didn't want to incorrectly state it.
Yeah.
But
big shout out to the internet for letting me look up those stats real quick.
The same sort of thing that we talk about with LSU. Phenomenal starting point for everything that Tulane wants to accomplish. They've got to now settle back down and go keep doing it week in, week out, clean up some of their miscues and go be that much better this week on the road at South Alabama. But you couldn't have asked for a much better start to the season when there's now more than ever a challenge to start a season cleanly because of the level of roster turnover year in, year out. And if you're Tulane, you're playing a Big Ten opponent right out of the gates, and they took care of their business certainly and now move on forward.
I wanted to hit on that too, because, Northwestern is not the class of the Big Ten, but they still are in that Power 4 conference. And we see a shakeup with Boise State losing to USF early in the year. That door for Tulane is open. They just got to keep on track. So they are a legit
Tulane is
legit contender to get that playoff spot.
They're in as much of the driver's seat to be the playoff team out of the group of 5 as anybody right now. I mean, again, it's 1 week in, and so it's hard to start looking and jockeying for position after just 1 week. But I mean, you're a a team that is 1-0 and beat a Power 4 Big Ten opponent and have 2 more power opponents on your schedule for weeks 3 and 4. And so everything is in front of you if you're Tulane, and you impressed an awful lot of people with your start to the season. So people are already taking notice, and you just have to take care of your business moving forward.
Absolutely. Hey, go Green Wave. Let's do this thing. Would love to see a Tulane playoff team with the best uniforms in the game.
RMFW, roll MF and wave.
I love that. I will be using it, and I will be having the not safe for work version later. Let's switch gears a little bit. I do want to talk about UL losing to Rice. 14-12. They were not able to sneak out that win. They only scored 6 points in the second half. I wasn't able to watch a lot of this game. Were you? And tell me what you kind of saw from it, and how do the Cajuns bounce back next week? Like we said, it is only week 1. We're talking all this good stuff about LSU, Tulane, but just like we're going to talk about Texas in a little bit, it is only week 1. You got to take this thing a week at a time, and the Cajuns still can have a very successful season. How do they do that?
So the really bad news for the Cajuns is part of what happened Saturday is yes, they got behind the 8 ball. Rice was kind of controlling the game, and you were just playing from behind against a team you don't really want to be playing from behind against. But then Walker Howard, in his much anticipated debut as the starter for the Cajuns, he ended up having to leave with a leg injury of some sort that did not look good. And I don't think we have confirmation on the extent of it, but it is concerning to say the least. And so certainly wishing all the best for Howard, who has waited for Walker Howard. I know him well enough. We'll call him first name the rest of the way for Walker, who has waited so long for this opportunity, finally gets a chance to start as a college quarterback, is doing it back home for his hometown Cajuns, just a couple miles away from where he won a state championship for STM. And for him to be sidelined, you just hope that it is whatever the best possible news that he can get right now is what he gets a chance to get and get back to it. And then obviously for the Cajuns, you lose, not a particularly experienced from a playing time on Saturday's quarterback, but he is the old man, I guess, of that quarterback room. The guy that's been around the college ranks and been with some high level programs. And so you lose him in that game, and you hope that you're not without him for, too long of a haul. They have some talented younger quarterbacks, including Daniel Beal from Catholic Baton Rouge, who went into that game late and was kind of thrown into a not great spot to try and play some catch up. But there's talent there, but obviously there's a reason that Walker was tabbed as the starter, that he had won that competition with his consistency through the course of this year. And so that's kind of the big storyline now is, okay, what's the state of Walker's knee?
Well, and also, I'm looking at the stats right here. UL only had 88 yards total in passing. Only one receiver had over one reception. That's not a winning formula. I'm just looking at it on paper, but you gotta have some people step up, especially when your star goes down. And hopefully Walker, I'm going to call him by his first name too. I've never met him in my life, but hopefully he has a speedy recovery. Hopefully it's not too serious. But maybe you get a weekend and Daniel Beal actually gets some first team practice reps. He's a little bit more in sync. He's not thrown in if he has to start this weekend for the Cajuns. But yeah, we wish Walker the best. Speedy recovery.
Yep, no doubt.
Yep. All right. Hey, let's go into this recap. We picked 7 games on our Friday show. The PODnas 7, as we call them. This is the 7 recap. Let's get into it. That's a 7. You didn't know.
It's backwards.
7.
I think.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah, it is. Is that right?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right.
Enough of shenaniganery. Not a word, but we'll go with it. Let's talk about some of the games that we picked. First, we'll just start off with Texas Ohio State. It was the main right when we kicked off 11 a.m. Corso got his last pick right as his final college game day. We both got it wrong.
Not only did he get his final headgear pick right with Ohio State. He went 6 for 6 this weekend on his picks. Across the board. He picked Florida State to beat Alabama.
Yeah.
He picked Miami to beat Notre Dame and on down. He picked LSU to beat Clemson. And for LSU fans, he picked LSU to win the national championship. And so the fact that he was perfect this week has to be that much more exciting for the folks in purple and gold, because Coach has gone out in a blaze of glory in terms of his predictions.
But for Texas, not so fast. Arch Manning had himself a not day. Ryan Day as Pierce Nipples. Everything was on the table in this first game.
Which one you want to talk about first, Nipples or Arch?
Let's talk about Arch first, because I said let's get away from the shenaniganery, and then we'll get back into it shortly with the Pierce Nipples of Ryan Day, which I will say again. We're not here to kink shame, but we do kink notice. Okay, let's go. I think Arch is going to be fine. It's one of the best defenses in the country in Ohio State. His very first meaningful start. The kind of stuff that I said, my issues with LSU scheduling these tough teams is when you schedule a really good opponent first, you don't have any time to get that rust off, or at least it feels like you don't. And most teams kind of need that. And I think that tune-up game really helps. I think if they would have played San Antonio Tech University State first week, he was able to get that confidence up, build that confidence, and then maybe go into a big game like this and play a little bit better. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I think it was a little bit of a reality check for everyone. I think everyone wanted to crown Arch as already the Heisman winner, and still remember, he's just a kid. He's gotta learn, and sometimes you gotta learn the hard way, and sometimes you gotta not have a great performance. If anyone is going to be able to come back from this, the man's football pedigree and the stuff that he can lean on with his family, I think we'll get him through this. Speaking wild stuff there, I know, but
I think it's important to point out with the level of competition out the gate and whatnot that, Ohio State, Notre Dame, some of these other schools weren't playing San Antonio Tech University State. I made sure to write down the acronyms, SATUS, either. But Julian Sayin had a pretty nice day overall for Ohio State against Texas. You saw CJ Carr. You saw some younger quarterbacks who were able to kind of step up. Obviously, Miami got the win there against Notre Dame, but I thought CJ Carr had largely a pretty solid game. But for Arch, to me, the biggest takeaway is yes, I think it was more of an Ohio State defense looking great dynamic than it was an Arch being bad. There were certainly a lot of areas where he can improve and just get more comfortable. And I think that the Texas offense as a whole and some of the things that they're throwing out there, that there will be a lot of strides that we watch from that team this season that we did not see in the opener for one reason or another. I think, though, that people rush to overpraise Arch ahead of him actually doing anything. And at the same time, now the backlash is far more aggressive than it should be. And that you watched a guy in his first big college start, the start to his era, with the amount of pressure on him and playing at the shoe and everything going on against the reigning national champs, and a great defensive performance by Matt Patricia's crew over there with the Buckeyes. And it wasn't great, but I don't think it was as bad as Twitter would have led you to believe it was either. They had a chance there late. There were a couple of throws that he would love to have back along the course of that game, but there were a couple of throws late where he gave receivers a chance that if some plays had been made, that this game was not far from being tied late on the road in the opener. And so, like you said, give him time to kind of bounce back. It's a long season and it's early in his career. And I think he's going to be fine. And that ultimately he was a lot less bad Saturday than he's getting roasted for on the internets.
Yeah. I mean, Matt Patricia won a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator. He knows he's a very, I was going to curse jar. He's a very poor head coach, but we see this all the time, even with Chip Kelly, who I don't think is a poor head coach, but is a fantastic coordinator and knows how to scheme up things, especially for a younger quarterback, to confuse them. But it's not like they lost by a touchdown. Like you said, Twitter would have you believe that it was 55-0. He had more passing yards than Julian saying, like he literally just threw an interception. That was kind of the difference. No one was lighting up the scoreboard in this game. It was a long down in the trenches type of game. And so I think it's just ridiculous to just already cast that Arch is going to be a bust after one game. Same as we're saying, that LSU could be a national title contender, which we do think they are. I don't think this takes Texas and obviously Ohio State with the win out of their goal for the year with this new playoff structure. 3-4 years ago when there's only 4 teams in, we're going to BCS, something like that. Yeah, this would really, really suck for a Texas or Clemson or Notre Dame, but that is not the case anymore. So you move on, you go to the next week. I'm absolutely positive that man is going to put up some numbers in the upcoming weeks and throughout the season. So
I don't have an AP poll vote, but if I did, Texas would be somewhere in the middle of my top 10 still, and I would still remain pretty optimistic about the potential.
If you had an AP poll vote, how many people would you tell? Like, would you throw it in to the first, like hey, what's up? I'm Jared Rosen. I have an AP poll vote.
Oh, it would be in my Twitter bio for sure.
Jared Rosen has AP poll vote. I want that for you now, actually. Speaking of shenaniganery, let's get into the main story.
This is why I'm here today.
Pierce nipples in college football on coaches. What do we think? If you don't know, there was a picture of Ryan Day, Ohio State's coach.
Pierce nipples in college football and the coaches who have them. Next on PODnas.
Oh, that's the reel right there. We got it. We got the content that we need. I just, like I said, we don't kink shame. Do whatever you want to your body. It's your body. I really don't care. But come on, man. At least I'm my nips are rock hard right now. I'm thinking about just going to I'm going to follow suit. I'm going to pierce my own nerves today in stance with Ryan Day and his pierced nipples.
This is really personal to me in a weird way. So I'm gonna be sidetracked for a second, not specifically on the piece of this picture that looked like there was a piercing. That looked like there was a little rod there or whatever. But at first seeing it on the timeline on Twitter, I just noticed the nipple in general and just thought people were pointing out that he had a hard nipple or hard nipples or whatever before the game, before I noticed the other two kind of components of all this. And so this is just going to become a vent session for me. For some reason, if you stay, people say, oh, like your nipples are hard. If you stay hard, you don't have to get hard sort of thing. My nipples are hard always. And I don't know why this is, but it's part of who I am as a person in 2025. I'm glad we're talking about this.
Oh my God. Thank you. Listen, if someone I hope someone stumbles across this video and makes it 30 minutes in, because this is PODnas gold right now.
And people love to point this out, and they see your nipples and they feel like, okay, now it's time to like touch or tweak the nipple or whatever. And that's okay. And it's really weird to me how okay people seem to feel with touching a man's nipples if they're hard, and how wildly inappropriate this would not fly if gender roles were reversed or whatnot. And I don't even know that I was going to say, I don't know that it makes me uncomfortable so much as I feel like I should be uncomfortable, but I've had it happen in some pretty professional settings where I'm like, this probably shouldn't be happening right now. And I don't know why, why a higher up in this company is touching my nipples in front of like a work meeting type thing.
Jared Roser has a AP vote, consistently hard nipple. Please don't touch.
I will sometimes wear like an extra undershirt, or not extra undershirt. It was only one at a time ever at most. But sometimes I will consciously think, okay, let me make sure to wear an undershirt because of my nipples, but I'll be in an undershirt, a regular shirt, a hoodie, and you'll see them working, doing their thing. And that's just kind of where we are. And I was glad that Ryan Day's Nipplegate opened up the door to talk about this, because it's not something you and I have ever talked about before.
No, it's not.
It's something
I'm learning so much new information right now, and I'm loving every single minute of it.
It's something I quite literally wanted to get off my chest, and so I'm glad we got there.
Nice. I can't wait to see your updated Twitter bio, X bio, whatever. Maybe do it
sure
on
about to say
too.
I can't wait to see your nipples.
I cannot wait to see your hard nerves, man. Let's run through a couple of those other games. La Tech takes care of Southeastern, but you can uncross. It's fine. I'm not going to come through the screen and touch. La Tech takes care of Nichols. La Tech takes care of Southeastern. Yeah. Troy goes in and gets the win versus Nichols. ULM won on Thursday or Friday, I believe. What else do we need to cover, Louisiana-wise, in this sports sphere?
Southern got a big win against Mississippi Valley State. Also, notably, McNeese State got a win to start its season. And so Matt Viator back with the program, helping rebuild the program where he had been at previously before moving on to an FBS opportunity for a while there. He is now McNeese State's all-time career coaching leader in victories with that win. And so shout out to Coach and the job that he and that staff and that team did this weekend, and just honestly the trajectory of that program overall. It seems like some positive things are happening out there in Lake Charles as they continue to rebuild from the storm a couple of years ago. Hey,
absolutely. Who is up next for Louisiana Tech? Because it was Southeastern, obviously, but they looked. Oh, it is LSU. My bad. I answered my own question. So Louisiana Tech's going to be 1-1, but there's a lot of good signs of progress from this first game. And I think that's kind of what you want from a team last year in Louisiana Tech that was struggling, to put it lightly. So, yeah.
Yeah, they took care of the business that they were supposed to take care of. And so, I mean, you can't start better than 1-0, and they did that. But now, obviously, the test ratchets up quite a bit, having to come down to the real Death Valley and face the 1-0 LSU Tigers fresh off of their big win. But yeah, nice. I mean, lots of wins all over the state. Grambling State took care of Langston, and so certainly a net winning percentage positive weekend for the state of Louisiana, despite a couple of losses snuck in there. But yeah,
I think that's, we didn't really hit Notre Dame at Miami. It was okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I enjoyed that game. I
thought you were. I ate my words. Carson Beck looked very nice. And you were kind of banging the bell that he was going to get back to form. I didn't believe it, but as of one game, looks like he's found a nice little home in Miami, and maybe that change of scenery was just what he needed.
Look, he's no Garrett Nussmeier, but I think he's going to have a positive step forward this season, and also where he was similar to Nuss on Saturday was I thought Miami's offensive line and running game did a really nice job of complementing him, and the defense was great. Despite a nice debut by the young quarterback in CJ Carr for Notre Dame, the Miami defense, other than a blown coverage late, that late drive that allowed Notre Dame to come back and tie it, there were some huge plays throughout the game for Miami to keep applying pressure to Carr and company. And so I thought a nice all-around job by Miami to start the season, take care of a win at home. The one that we did not pick on Friday, but we should talk a little bit more about is that game we kind of mentioned, Corso picking Florida State to beat Alabama. Florida State controlled that game throughout, just were the better, tougher, more physical, more intense team. If you had watched that game without being able to see logos or uniform colors or whatever it was, you would have certainly thought that the roles were completely reversed, because Florida State owned that game, and Alabama.
Ryan Williams looks like they're in a bad. They mentioned it at the many times during that game, but Ryan Williams, I know he was dealing with a little bit of injury throughout that game, but something looked off. I also am going to stand on what I said when we previewed Alabama. I don't think Ty Simpson's the answer. I think we'll see who's their backup quarterback. What's his name?
Keelan Russell.
Yeah, I know there was a quarterback competition going in that. I think it's only a matter of time before we see Keaton Russell at least make an appearance on the field, because while Ty Simpson, he had 250 yards, he didn't throw a touchdown. I think he threw 2 touchdowns, didn't have an interception. I think he looked super duper hesitant for a lot of that game and got bailed out a lot of the times by Bernard, who seemed like he was his safety blanket that game.
Bernard had a solid game.
He had 146 yards. He was all over the place, but it was like tunnel vision. It was tunnel vision of like, oh, they're double covering Ryan Williams. I'll throw it to Bernard. And it was like not really reading the progressions. It was a rough day in general, and I loved every single second of it. I get Florida State fans, if any Florida State fan is watching, why this is so compelling to do to someone, because I had like 8 Alabama fans walk into the bar, and every time one of them walked in loudly in my purple and gold jersey, oh, followed by a suck that tiger.
Yeah. 100%.
It was great.
Tommy Castellanos this summer saying that he didn't think Alabama could contain him. Nick Saban wasn't there to save him. Talk about, you mentioned the phrase earlier, standing on business. He wrote the check and he cashed it, and was the dude that just what he brought to the field in terms of his confidence, swagger, energy, all those things really kind of emanated throughout that Florida State team. Gus Malzahn continues to be as successful against Alabama as anybody through the years. And so great job by Florida State starting. I know we're kind of wrapping it up, and we've already gone long, but just on a couple of these, I guess let's focus on just those 3 top 10 matchups this weekend and the Alabama Florida State game. And kind of quickly, looking at the Florida State-Alabama game to start, do you think that what we saw Saturday was more a matter of Florida State and a huge positive sign, or more a matter of Alabama and a real negative sign of where they are? I think, honestly, both.
I was going to say both. I think it's a little bit of both. I don't think Alabama's they're not Nick Saban's Alabama.
They're not.
They're not. They do not have a swagger. I'm going to be honest with you. They don't. Florida State had that swagger, and they came in. I think Florida State was heavily undervalued after the year that they had last year. I think things unraveled very quickly and just got out of hand last year. I don't think they were as bad as that 2-10 record, but sometimes when the locker room is lost, that's really, you can't do much. And we've seen that before, being LSU fans, at the hands of Florida State. It's really tough to come back from, but they obviously put that all in the past, and they were able to really, really come back with a big statement win. But I think Florida State is going to trip up a little bit. Tommy Castellanos only threw the ball 14 times. He didn't need to. They were running all over the place on him. But when you're going into this, the ACC schedule that they're going to have, I think you're going to have to be able to pass the ball a little bit more, but they really didn't need to. They were controlling the clock. They were controlling the game. I think this is a much more of Florida State is back on the rise, and Alabama, thankfully, looks like they're in a little bit of a decline.
Yeah, I lean more toward it being Florida State being good than Bama being terrible. I think Florida State's going to be.
Yeah, and I don't think Bama's terrible. I just don't think they're what we think of with when we think of Alabama and what we've thought of as Alabama the last 2 decades.
100% agree. I think Florida State is in the thick of that ACC race this year with Clemson and Miami and others. Alabama, I think, is going to be still a really good, relatively highly ranked team, but that you talk about it just not looking like the Nick Saban Alabama team. And I think in the Saban era, you would have watched a different level of energy and intensity and a confidence that they're probably going to figure it out at some point and win this game late. And just watching the Alabama players during the course of that game, there was no point where I thought they were coming back. It just seemed like Florida State was going to cruise to it. But kind kind of continuing that. Miami good versus Notre Dame bad. What was your bigger takeaway of whose message was louder, I guess, or what was a bigger piece of the equation?
Like I said, I think Carson Beck, like a reclamation year kind of. Again, with these first games that are such high profile games, I'm not taking too much on one side or the other unless Alabama loses, and then I will fully dive in on that bandwagon at all times. But
I was just gonna say I agree on Miami, and then I think we probably both agree Ohio. It sounded like we did. Ohio State as being really, really good is the bigger takeaway there than Texas being particularly flawed. They'll have stuff to figure out, and then obviously LSU. I think Clemson's going to still be a really good team this year, but LSU really sent one of the loudest messages of the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest takeaways this weekend is what you just said, is that, like we've kind of said, if things roll in the right direction and this team stays focused, they are a national title contender, and that is super fun. I'm super biased, but I think it's better when LSU has a team with some swagger, and I'm very excited to see how this season plays out for them.
When they play with swagger, there is not a swaggier program in the country. There's a reason why during that national title run that kids from coast to coast were trying to get on the gritty or, get the gat, and like everything just took over the country. And so, yeah, it'll be fun to watch if this group gets an opportunity of that nature where they become kind of a fan favorite outside of Louisiana that everyone's kind of watching on Saturdays later on in this season. But you really need LSU to have a great season too, because just looking back at our draft from a week ago, your top 3 picks all lost this weekend.
Okay, easy, Boise State. All right, let's calm down.
I know.
All right.
You were texting me about Boise on Thursday, and I'm looking, and I was still feeling like Texas probably goes up to Ohio State and gets the win. And obviously Bama was a pick, one of my kind of mid-round picks, and so there were reasons why I was not feeling great. And then as some things continued to shape up the way they did, I took Tulane before I took Boise. Miami got that win. Ohio State got the win, Georgia and Penn State with big wins, Oregon big wins. So I started to feel much better throughout the course of the day on Saturday about where my draft stood. But it's a long season.
All right. We've gone on way too long, but it's college football.
So it's a long show.
We're still back, baby. You can find us everywhere, on the internet. But if you're watching this on YouTube, please like, share, comment. We'd love to get that up if you can and you're willing. I'm going to beg. So please do that. Also, you can go to LA versus all y'all. Cover your nipples. LA versus all y'all on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find us on Instagram, PODnas_LA. Louisiana versus all y'all website is up.
Probably by the time people see this on Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So go check that out. Great new website. Your home for Louisiana sports. Jared has done a great job and has been working his ass off to really get that thing up, and I'm super excited to see it.
That's what she said again. Also, continue to, for me, every time the site stuff comes up, shout out to Mark Miller, who has done the vast majority of design work. His dad, Bill, helped him out with some of the behind-the-scenes formula stuff for power rankings and some of those things, and just, on a data side of things. Jacob Colson's been very involved. Cole Miller, Brett McCormick. It's been great to have a lot of people getting involved and doing some great stuff to get this thing rolling.
Louisiana versus all y'all is building and growing, and that's exactly what we like to see. And we're going to keep you updated throughout the entire season with all stuff Louisiana related. That's what we do here at PODnas. Thank y'all so much for coming out today. Appreciate y'all, PODnas. Nipples.
No free nip picks, all right?